So this is me. I work at an agency called Isobar. You can find me in a lot of places with the very catchy handle, Skinny Bouffant. Yes, be careful when you use a joke as your Twitter handle and then you're stuck with it for the next 25 years. And I mentioned that because I will tweet quite a lot of the links from the presentation out afterwards, and obviously it will be on my Creativepool profile as well. So let's get started. Hello, Isobar. A few little details about us. We're a global digital agency, and we very much believe in experience-led transformation, but very much making sure that's powered by creativity. We see that as a strategic difference for us in the world of agency consultancies. So I'm going to be talking about blockchain as a creative medium. I'm going to assume that there's some experts about blockchain in the audience, and then there's people that know nothing about it. So, which is totally cool. Please don't give me a hard time. About 2.5 years ago, I did a presentation and wrote an article that was about giving that falling piano another look. And what I was getting at was this idea that if we were sat here and a piano fell through the sky and crashed to the floor, the police came and they all took a statement from us, and that statement was accurate absolutely to the millisecond. We could be pretty confident that that piano fell through the sky, from the sky and crashed on the floor. And this is essentially what's happening with blockchains, right? It's a way to give you distributed truth as opposed to having a hierarchy of truth, which our banking system is based on. So blockchain, which came out as part of Bitcoin, came after the financial crisis because it was a way of getting away from central banks. I'm not going to talk about crypto in terms of a currency. I'm not going to give you investment advice. It's probably a good time to buy. But what was important was about this is that for a lot of people, blockchain is fintech. Fintech is boring. It has no, why would I be interested in it if I'm a kind of creative pursuit? And actually what is interesting is that if you look at this world and then you can use it to challenge yourself about how we have grown up with, if you like, an established truth, an established way of thinking, and then you have to flip it on its head. And it's quite an interesting journey that you have to go through. And actually behind this is this idea that things are very hierarchical in the way that we operate, often in agencies, in businesses, in organizations. And we're now moving towards a more distributed, flatter structure. And I would, you could talk about this is how you might have gone from a flat earth model to a round earth model. And again, it's just an interesting challenge for you to think differently and then use that in a creative way to then power yourselves forwards. So you may think the presentation's rubbish. You might think it's full of inaccuracies. The real point behind this is to use it as a way to help you, to stimulate you to be creative, to take new inputs and kind of do new things in new ways. So let's get started. So first diversion. In the write-up for this presentation, I mentioned that I was quite inspired by Iris, who is the goddess of chaos or discord. Pick which one you want. Now, here we see Iris. She was a minor goddess. She never quite made it into Zeus's stable, but she was quite an important character. And if you go online, you can download this book. Don't pay for it. It's PDF, Principia Discordia, which actually takes the thinking and the story of Iris and turns it into a kind of semi-religion. And actually what it says is that for us to be truly creative, we need order and disorder. Now, quite a few people have kind of built on this. Anyone who's into Robert Owen Wilson will know that, who wrote the Illuminati, will know that that had some characters called the Justified Agents of Moo, also known as the Jams, also known as a KLF. So here is a KLF reference for you. That is the Moo brick. You can buy this from L13 Light Industrial Workshop. It includes 23 grams of a dead person's ashes, and these blocks will all be placed into a pyramid to build the People's Pyramid, and actually this will be announced tomorrow at the Toxtuf's Day of the Dead. Right? That is a block pyramid. More details at Moofication. I'm shit you're not, right? This is true. The only way you get in is if you live in Toxtuf or you turn up with a shopping trolley. I'm going to be talking about blockchains, right? So I hope you like that bit of chaos, right? So why blockchain? Well, it's interesting, right? Because this was a study from 2017 by by one poll and brought to me by Adverti, who's an AR network. And you can see there, this tiny slither is blockchain. So quite frankly, clients don't give a fuck about it, right? Right now, there's a lot of chat, but there's lots of other things that they are obsessing about, like virtual reality, AI chatbots, and augmented reality. So it's popular, but it isn't the most thing that's the big thing that's keeping clients, certainly keeping them awake at night. You should also look at this tweet. You might not see it from the back, but this is breaking news. As corporate America discovers that blockchain check is just a slow fucking database. I'm sorry for the swearing. It's there. But you'll see that there's been a lot of buzz about it, and it's starting to tail off now. And then if we go to Vint Cerf, and Rob was here, was on the panel before. He knows a lot about blockchain, a lot about infrastructure, and actually he's very wise about this. But Vint Cerf, fire of the internet, do I need a blockchain? No. Now this is for balance and to make sure that we're not living in a filter bubble. And I just want to say that, not everyone is buying into this. There's a few different opinions around, but let's kind of get into this in a bit more detail. So what is blockchain? Well, blockchain is a read-only, immutable ledger that's spread across the internet over multiple nodes. And lots of people will give you various definitions of this, but you have a block, it includes some data, some magic maths happen, you get a block hash, and a hash is an alphanumeric string of variable length, and the longer the length, the harder it is to crack. That is then fed into the next block, and you go through. And what's good about this is that you don't need to trust anyone else in the network. You're all operating in the same way, and as long as you keep coming up with the same answers, each of these transactions are added to the block, and then that propagates round. We've written a playbook. You'll see the URL there. Please register and check it out. I came across this a couple of days ago. There is a board game called Scrabbits, and you can find the link on Motherboard. Again, I'll share it after the show, where they're actually using the Scrabble board and some series of cards to help explain how blockchain works. And actually, they get into quite a lot of detail here and really start to pick through some of the finer points about what's happening. But they're individual records. These are represented. They have a kind of weird number. The hash looks like a gobbledygook. It's just strings and numbers. And then also that represents the token that might be used, and then some of the wallets that have been sent through. So if I was sending something to this gentleman here, it would all be tracked, and we could actually kind of have a good look and see what all those things are. We could spend the rest of the presentation trying to explain how it works, but I'm going to show you how people are using it. For those of you who got Netflix, this is a great film, Banking on Bitcoin, and does a really good job of explaining how it works, including how the miners are rewarded. And that's an important point, because actually the processing of the blockchain is known as mining, and which is an incentive to help people process this data. And the person that finds the block and solves a problem is then rewarded with a coin. And you've probably seen lots of examples of server farms sat in Iceland churning through, doing all of this. And they use a model which is called proof of work. And this proof of work is you're proving that the maths behind each transaction is secure, and that's kind of helping the immutable aspects of it. There are other ways of working through a proof, and we could talk about those after the show. But this idea of proof of work, or proof of stake, or proof of, is quite important to the concepts of blockchain. So how do you get creative with it? Well, you can start to see how people are kind of using it, using the symbols. This was an exhibition in France earlier this year. This is a symbol for Bitcoin. This is for Monero, which is known as a privacy coin. Splatter paintings, and this is a gentleman called Satoshi Nakamoto. This is Satoshi Nakamoto. He has nothing to do with Bitcoin, other than his name was used by the inventors of blockchain and Bitcoin to disguise themselves. But what you see is quite a strong culture behind this. It's quite underground in some regards, but actually people are using it and kind of popularizing it and using it in artworks. One of the key phrases that you'll come across if you do any trading is hodl. So hodl it's an epic story. It was just a typo. So someone was freaking out about, hold on, I'm not going to sell my crypto, misspelt it, and then the story behind it is, of course, hold on for dear life. And you'll see it in the Nike logo, and actually it's quite amusing, sort of a few smiles. And anyone who does any trading, they'll recognize these candlestick graphs, which are charting the rise and the fall of the blockchain prices, I think probably every 15 minutes. So again, it's demonstrating about how quite a nerdy technology infused kind of topic can be then kind of fed out through popular culture. Slightly out of sequence, but this is the idea of people using it as for crypto raves. So what actually started as a bit of a joke is now kind of being used in an underground way to drive ticketing. So instead of just knowing the password to get you in on the door, is that what you have to do is solve some problems, potentially get an encrypted message, and then use this to kind of help validate who you are. And again, it's an interesting experiment, but shows how this idea of distribution, security can be pushed forwards and kind of used in other alternative ways. Mining. So this mining of the blockchain, which is this processing of the blockchain, has been used by a number of artists. On the left-hand side, it's a piece of work called Harvest. And this is demonstrating the energy inefficiencies of mining crypto. So they're using wind power to actually process the blockchain and then actually earn some money as part of that. But it takes a very long time to earn any kind of money. And an even stranger position is to use respiratory mining, in which you're blowing into a mask, which again is helping generate energy, which is driving a mobile phone, which is again processing the blockchain. These are ludicrous ways to mine any kind of and process a blockchain, but they make the point that actually mining is something we're doing and we can do it anywhere, but also there's an energy component to it. So they're kind of more statement pieces in terms of art. But imagine you are a brand, maybe you're a whiskey, and actually your maturing process is something that you're very proud of. This ability to actually do something very slowly and very inefficiently might actually be of real interest to you. So you've probably, a few of you come across this idea as ICOs, which is initial coin offerings, which is I want to start a business, I want to raise some capital, and actually I invite you to buy some essentially coins in my business, and then I will kind of release some coins back to you. It's pretty popular. There's actually some really interesting businesses being funded this way, but there's quite a few scams as well. So on the left, we see someone who made the useless Ethereum token. Ethereum, for those that don't know, is a form of cryptocurrency. In fact, it's a network which is powered by the token Ether, and actually, in many ways, it's like a development platform that allows you to build a lot of what's called distributed apps on it. And a lot of the tokens that you see used are built on Ethereum. But this was just about, we're going to be completely honest, there's no use to this token, as you give us your money and you're part of something, but you're not going to go any further. And this Ponzi ICO was something that kind of a gentleman did to make the point that actually there's a whole culture around this. And again, it was a kind of spoof piece of work. And one of the things that happens with this is that you can also have a smart contract. That smart contract works on a number of interesting triggers. And in this instance, he inanely used it to choose the color of his Tesla that he was going to buy with the money that people had bought his useless tokens with. So again, what it's doing is it's kind of using this and subverting this in a way which is kind of playing with the idea about how we fund things, how we kind of trust these things that we see online, and then kind of how we can get people to choose and get them involved. This starts to get a bit more interesting. Embedded art. So this is a website called cryptograffiti.info, and it allows you to insert things into the blockchain. So it doesn't need to be purely a transactional data. What it can be is it could be an image, it could be a video, it could be something else. So you have this concept now of proof of existence. So what you could do is that you could say, I've got this amazing invention, and I want to essentially declare when that was published, but I'm really scared that everyone will kind of realize what my amazing thing is. So what you could do is you could write it into the blockchain, it gets distributed, that is then irrefutable that it was published at that particular time, but no one can read it because you have the keys to look at it, which you can then release at a later date, which means that you've got proof that it existed. And I think this is quite an interesting concept, actually, where we start to challenge some of the ways that we're operating. And again, this means I can do this. I don't need expensive lawyers. And actually, I can kind of pull this through. It's also been used in subversive ways. This image actually is banned in China. Anything to do with Tiananmen Square is eradicated. So what people are doing is they're actually putting quite important political works into the blockchain. These go undetected by the authorities, and then they can be shared by releasing the keys to unlock them. So this is quite, I think, an interesting and exciting way of doing it. For balance, there are a few things that are embedded in the Bitcoin blockchain that probably shouldn't be there. And it's very difficult to remove them, if not nigh on impossible. But again, this opens up some creative opportunities. And I think that if you were a brand, for example, what you might do is put some vouchers or tokens or something of interest, propagate it through, and then encourage people to unlock that or try and kind of solve some problems or puzzles to then get at it. And that's kind of exactly what's been happening to artists called Andy Bouch at an exhibition here called New Money. A few people have done something similar, but he used 100,000 Lego blocks to make these pictures, and within them is contained a code which relates to a wallet, and if you then can crack the wallet, you can take the money out of the wallet. And there's quite an interesting story. It's a terrible piece of art, but actually I think had about maybe, I don't know, it's several tens of thousands of dollars embedded in the wallet, and people solved this image, and then we're able to get the seed phrase, which gives you the key, which allows you to take the money out. And again, this is quite, I think, if you're a gamer, this is a tactic that's been used a lot within promoting kind of gaming culture. And so I think for me, this is quite an interesting approach to kind of unlocking things and engagement and driving activations. Now, I've called him the crypto art superstar, which is a bit unfair. Kevin A. Bosch, he's a very famous portrait photographer, and this fine potato 345, is something that he sold for €1 million. And this is important because it kind of unlocks this idea of value. And so he's done quite a lot of work around this. So he's created a coin, I am a coin. He's then drawn his own blood, and then he's used that to actually print the contract addresses. And he's using this as a way to kind of bring the digital, the blockchain elements, into the physical world, and also use it to release a number of artistic goodies. Within crypto trading, the idea that you make lots of money and buy a Lambo has been popularized, and in this instance, the yellow Lambo, it's the token address in beautiful fluorescent lights, which he was able to sell for $400,000 to the former CEO of Skype. He's also teamed up with Al Weiwei, where they have this idea of priceless. They released 2 coins. The first coin will never be sold because it's priceless. The second coin, you can buy fractions of it. So it helps play with this idea of value, where we ascribe value and how we kind of get to it. He also worked with Gifto, which I'll talk about in a second, but this is the Forever Rose project. This was released in Valentine's Day, and it was bought by 10 people for $1 million. But what's interesting about this is that, you know, a rose is a symbol of love, but the rose dies. Right? If we think about proof of love, that purchase of the digital, the virtual rose on the blockchain lives forever. So again, plays with this idea of immutable proof, this idea of I've declared my love and it is everlasting. And again, I think this is an interesting position to be kind of working through. I mentioned Gifto. It's known as a virtual gifting protocol. When you get into this world, you'll see lots of people kind of building these foundations and platforms. Gifto is a way for you to, not surprisingly, give gifts, predominantly to digital creators. So this app here is UpLive. It's big in kind of Asia. It's a live video stream, not dissimilar to Musical.ly, which is obviously now TikTok, but it's a way for you to show your support to the creators. And you'll see the little diagram here where I'm a fan. I fill my wallet. I can then gift my crypto to the people that I are liking, and they can kind of then benefit from that. They can either hoard those elements or then kind of trade that cash. So I think it's an interesting way of building support, and there's quite a lot of work within the creative community to work out how creators or people that have come together on various projects can be rewarded for the work that they're doing. And actually when something has been viewed, when something has been purchased, that can filter through. So it has a lot of impact around the idea of royalties. You've probably all heard of CryptoKitties. I think this is a genius idea. These are all individual cats. They have some specific characteristics. They will also breed, and there is an opportunity to ascribe value to these. And you can see here. So these are fractions of Ethereum, about 0.2, 0.3. But actually, some of these kitties were sold for vast amounts of money. But what's amazing about them is they are individual. And actually, what it's starting to point towards is that digital assets can now be unique, which is something we haven't been able to do in any kind of meaningful way, which has big implications. if we, and actually when you get into this, you'll see that there's lots of these, from CryptoBox, Crypto Puppies, Tron Dogs. There are about 1,000 of these things. And actually, again, I think it unlocks opportunities for creators to be making these and selling them. And again, if you go to a website called OpenSea.io, you'll see that there's a marketplace for these crypto collectibles. It's pretty easy to buy. And actually, you'll see the footballer at the top, but we have this for the NLB, we have this for professional footballers. And again, it's like the new version of cigarette cards or trop trumps or sticker packs, but each one is individual. You own it. The image could be copied, but the ownership pins back to you, and you can then keep it, sell it, trade it. And again, this is, I think, a really interesting concept for our online lives. You can get it if you use the app Vault. You get to this from vault.io. It's a way for you to unlock some of these things and collect them. And also, it allows you to start thinking about this idea of dynamic apps. How many people have heard of the browser Brave? A few of you. Brave is really interesting. It's from the inventor of JavaScript, and it's really trying to clean up the web as we know it, which has been bastardized by digital advertising. And so it's looking to try and make things faster, more secure, and also handle your data in a better way. One of the things that it does do is have this concept of Brave rewards. So if you visit a website, it tracks that, and then it will then reward back out the websites that you're viewing most of the time. And actually, there's a website I visit several times a day, and I have an ad blocker, and I feel quite guilty about doing that. But I now look at it through Brave, and I kind of start gifting hard cash to it through the token, which they can cash in, and they've got quite a lot of people behind this. MetaMask works in conjunction with Brave. It's a wallet and allows you to accumulate some of these crypto collectibles that we spoke about, but also gives you access to some of the dynamic apps. So actually the bigger picture here is about how potentially we can migrate from the left-hand column, which is loads of services that you're very familiar with, into this brave new world where we have things that are looking and using blockchains and distributed computing, and it gets to be pretty kind of interesting and exciting. It would be remiss not to kind of share the bigger list. There's lots of really, really interesting businesses happening here. Who knows which ones are going to survive? But it's highly stimulating, and it's useful for us to kind of look at this and have a good think about where it can take us. Some of it's probably pointless. Some of it is fundamental. So I thought I'd just share some thought starters. How can you, take the cultural terms that are associated with crypto and the blockchain? How can you maybe use it for ticketing in innovative ways? How could you make a statement around mining and energy? What's the idea of truth and irony that we could have here, and fake news, and how that kind of works? Proof of existence is publishing and making sure that I actually was the first person to do this. Having a treasure hunt, which is obviously a very popular digital activation, but this is a new way to do it. How we might measure value. And again, how that could be pushed back out into the community and people can actually vote with their feet or vote with their tokens. The idea of gifting and also unique collectibles. I think this is particularly rich in a world where people don't like that many things and their mobile phone is particularly valuable to them. The ability to then take all your treasured gifts with you on your phone that are stored in the blockchain, I think is particularly of interest to creative individuals that might be creating those. If you want some crypto, use my Coinbase. I'm going to tweet all these links, and also on my Creativepool profile.
Thanks,
That's
Simon.
me. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions? No questions. That all made complete sense to everybody. Surely there must be a question.
Yes. I'll cheat and ask him a question. Loads of cool stuff. Which bit of all of it excites you the most personally?
Two things. So personally, I'm really interested in crypto collectibles because it gives me some motivation to actually try and make something and then kind of create multiple versions of it, which I've done quite a bit in my career. And I have written up for a profile to say that I will do it with my 5-year-old son. He's creating reams and reams of hybrid dinosaurs. So actually that's a great seed for us to take those and kind of draw them up and create them and then kind of make multiple versions of it as a bit of an exercise for me and him just to kind of do stuff together. So that's a personal connection. I think the other thing, and I'm not quite sure the way it will go, and it's a conversation we will have, is this idea of distributed apps and what that really means and how that can potentially change the internet for better. You know, there's a lot of talk around technology companies, and in particular, you know, essentially Fango, but probably Facebook and Google have got too much power. And actually, advertising has fucking destroyed the internet, right? It's a real problem. It's killing the open web. And I think browsers like Brave is a really interesting way to help maybe try and change that. You know, it's not guaranteed, but at least we're thinking about it, and then we are trying to kind of change it and make it different. So, I mean, they're quite different, those two, but I think the infrastructure piece is really fascinating, and I think that has great implications for our society, democracy, publishing, and for creatives, actually. So, yeah.
One more.
Hi, are any Isobar clients actioning this? Have you managed to sell anything, but have you managed to push this onto anyone?
Thank you. It's a very good question. So we are, within our team, you know, we are an agency that gets very excited by technology, you can probably imagine. Our Blue Infinity, which is Isobar Switzerland, as a track and trace product for the tobacco industry. And we are working with IBM to push that out and make it blockchain. We are talking with a very large distiller about how we might use it with them. For us, it's quite interesting. What I didn't say, and I should say, is that it has big ramifications for media. So you've got a business called Truth in the UK, which is actually doing a similar thing to Brave. And there's also a business called Finestra that is also looking to bring blockchain technologies into the media. I think that that's quite a big, gnarly issue. But also there are some quite interesting ways in which you can then use it with a client, like I summarized. And I don't want to give too much away, but we are having these conversations with clients. And I'm very much looking at using it in a less about infrastructure and more about creative activations and using it as a way to kind of get people to think about things in a different ways and kind of, if you like, PR buzz around that. But I think there's, you know, good opportunity to push it out in a number of areas. So hopefully that was interesting.
Thank you,
Anything
Simon.
on stage.
That was amazing.
Thank you.